Well, hello everybody, this is David Bianco. Welcome to the channel. So today's vinyl shootout has a bit of a twist. It involves having someone with me doing the shootout to provide both their opinion and the ability of us to be able to switch back and forth with the listener not knowing which record was being played or which pressing is being played. And that creates the blind test, which I think is a great way to take any perceived bias out of knowing which record is which when you're doing these reviews. And so I want to thank Vinyl Rush Brad, who came over and he provided 2 additional copies of this record because I received the Analogue Productions 75th Atlantic series on 45 RPM 2 LPs as part of that whole series that I have ordered, and I wanted to compare it. So he brought 2 versions that he has, and we are going to shoot those out here next on the Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion. Brad was gracious to provide me an OG copy, a US OG, and a Mobile Fidelity copy as well. And so he got those to me, but then he actually was able to come over and actually do the shootout with me, which really makes it interesting because when we start to compare these, having 2 people, you can start to get to blinding the person listening to know exactly which one they're hearing. So now they're really judging it for what it really is just in the hearing. So want to explain how we started, Brad, on this one?
Yeah, so we started out with the original versus the Mofi. Kind of, both are 33 RPM, kind of made sense from that perspective. Maybe pick the winner and then, take the winner between those 2 and go up against the Atlantic 75.
Yeah, so in doing that, I was able to have Brad sit kind of the way he's sitting here and maybe get in a sweet spot, and then I was able to put one of each on each turntable, and he didn't know which ones I was putting on there. So right out of the box, we started up, and again, I synchronized these together so that they're 5 to 10 seconds apart in terms of timing, so you can hear it on one, hit the button, and go to the other, and basically hear the same section repeated to make a quick snap comparison into your evaluation of what you're hearing, which is pretty helpful. Now, to get that synchronization set up, then to do some volume matching, I've got a line-in box with a potentiometer on it so that one of those I can adjust to calibrate to get it even with the other, and to make sure that we're kind of not hearing overemphasis that's purely, volume based. And so going through the comparison then of the OG or the original US versus the Mobile Fidelity, what was your experience listening to that, Brad?
Well, maybe a little bit on the background on both
Sure.
of these, right? As far as the pedigree is concerned. So the US original that I have at least is an SRC pressing. It has TY1 in the dead wax, which stands for Tim Young, a mastering engineer, I believe, based in the UK. And sometimes he puts Tom Tom in some of the pressings that he does and masters. So I think some folks are probably maybe more familiar with that, as far as his signature, if you will, in the dead wax. So that's the original. The original is the original. Came out in '87 when that album came out, and is pretty clean copy. As far as the Mofi is concerned, it's one of the Silver Label series, which means that they weren't able to take it from the original analog tapes, but rather a copy in general. So that's kind of how that series was delineated. And according to, at least in Discogs, which took it directly from the Mofi website, it's from a half-speed 30-inch 30 IPS tape analog copy to their analog lathe, analog console to lathe. So that was the sort of the mastering chain for the Mofi version of INXS kick that came out, I think, in 2011.
Right. And the copy aspect is why, in Mobile Fidelity terms, they would throw that silver label. If they didn't know the provenance that was done, or it was a copy or anything, then if it wasn't what they considered the original master tape, those fell off into that silver label series, which they were a little cheaper, $5 or so cheaper, but certainly mixed results with those a lot of times, for a variety of reasons. But the authenticity of it being something other than the original master recording is usually the reason. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So to the evaluation. So really, you could tell a difference to me right off the bat. We really focused, really you can listen to all of side one. It's sort of hit after hit. Guns in the Sky, then it's a New Sensation next, and then Devil Inside, and then into Need You Tonight and Mediate. I mean, just one right after the other. But you could tell right off the bat the difference in how they sound. The Mofi definitely had more bass, in my opinion. But the highs were really rolled off. I don't know. I'm not sure what happened there, but there was a huge difference. Whereas the original, there wasn't much bass, but the highs were there for sure. Very crisp, very easy to hear, and sounded really pretty good. Other than, I found myself wanting more bass. That was the thing to me, is the Mofi just made me hungry for bass on the original. I was thinking, gosh, if we could have the original with the Mofi's bass, that would be just right. It's
marriage made in heaven.
Yeah, it's sort of the three bears, if you will.
Yeah,
one
right.
One being just right, and so both to me were lacking, but for different reasons.
Yeah, they definitely had deficiencies. The Mofi sounded a little bloated, and honestly, the lack of top end was really pronounced soon as you put on the original. It just didn't have the bite at the top end, and you knew that in the first place. But then when you compared it, you're like, oh my gosh, really a strong experience of lacking that, because these records have a lot of higher level action going on that really keeps you engaged with the deeper bass. So you're kind of like, at one point you're like, I don't like either of them. It's kind of like, you're kind of like, I don't really like either of them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because the original, it sounded like an 80s record.
Yeah.
Frankly. I mean, it kind of had that, a little bright, kind of had that 80s sheen on it, if you will. Almost, honestly, after a while, it can be fatiguing. Yeah. Really.
Yeah, it almost had a little, even though it was off an analog tape, it had a little bit of that digitalish kind of feeling to it.
Yeah.
And maybe the Mofi was trying to tame that a bit. But they kind of went too far, I think.
That's the impression I got.
Yeah. So I think, so both of those are there, and neither one really, it's kind of like anything else. Anything stands on its own, and you kind of live with it. But when you start to compare, a really good steak to a average, going Outback or whatever, you kind of realize, oh yeah, there's a pretty big difference, so.
Very true.
Yeah. So, and it was consistent across all the songs. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like certain songs maybe gave it a little bit of an advantage, different than what we found on a previous song. So it was very much consistent across the board. So.
Yeah. And I mean, especially I think of Devil Inside that, has really good bass in it. Starts well with the kick and the bass kind of comes in. I liked the original better all the way around, but I kind of found it wanting. It's like, okay, I want the bass that I heard on the Mofi, especially on that song, on the original, but it just wasn't there. and that's what I really missed, on that.
I could have put the two turntables through my mixer and played them together, and then
Done the perfect mashup.
Then
Yeah.
the perfect mash. Speaking of the perfect mashup, so then we had to put on the Analogue Productions record, and Brad, I'll give you the honor.
Well, it was, it's been sort of the recurring theme in my experience, independent from yours, David, is, every time when I've found a record to be lacking, I think of like the Couch album, for example, the Crosby, Stills and Nash. It's like the Atlantic 75 comes along, and everything that I was wanting and I felt like that was missing is there. And where that edition really fixes the holes that I heard in some of the previous iterations. And this was the perfect example of that, of really marrying the strengths of the two, the original and the Mofi, bringing in the strong bass, but a lot more refined than the Mofi. So you'd mentioned that you thought that the bass on the Mofi was muddy, and I agree with you. Mm-hmm. On the Atlantic 75, it's strong, but it's not muddy. It's
precise.
Detailed. It's precise.
Very precise.
And it has the highs, but it's not fatiguing. It's just right.
Yeah.
All of the detail is there, and I'll tell you, a great example was in Need You Tonight, where you can hear, if you listen to the percussion, it's like there's 16th notes on the hi-hat going on at the same time as kind of it almost sounds like rim shots, that kind of figure that was going on at the same time. I've never been able to hear those separated like I could on the Atlantic 75. I mean, that goes for the original CD, that goes for both of the original and the Mofi. So everything that at least that I was looking for, is what I heard with the Atlantic 75, and that's the best thing I can say, really.
Yeah, the imaging was outstanding. I mean, there was so much ability to pick things out. The soundstage had a lot more depth and width and presence, and it just. I mean, this is a record that I didn't have a copy of it. I know the songs, and for whatever reason at that time I didn't buy it. But man, I was like, I want to listen to this record. I mean, it was just impressive as hell. And I really, it was like, yeah, this is the way these things are supposed to sound. And it really, it's like you talked about the Couch album. There've been a couple others. It's kind of like seems like these AP 75s from Chad, these 2x45, they fix what was wrong. So we had these situations where, one was too bassy, one was too bright. Now we didn't have the Miles Showell Abbey Road 2x45. Anybody out there has it and wants to loan it to me, shootout, I'll be more than happy to do that. I just didn't have access to that. But I know that's the one I think also would be a good comparison to this one. But boy, it's going to have to really stretch, to be honest with you. This representation of this record, between the quietness of the vinyl, the bass impact, the voice accuracy, and the high-end polish, really goes a long way to making this record just really jump out of your speakers. I mean, really come at you. It's almost like the album should be called Dive, because it dives at you. It kicks you as well, and it just really was a really great listening experience. And to me, it represented something that tells me that, with the right engineering of the mastering process and with the right care given to that. Now this is, ironically, this is in fact from Ryan K. Smith, an EQ Dolby tape copy that he used for this. So it was actually probably, it was EQ'd exactly the way it was made originally, and they froze that EQ setting that may very well be exactly what it was. So then you're going and comparing that more to the OG relative to what the Mofi tried to correct in and of itself. So I don't know how much Ryan had to do with the tape and the mastering process when he cut the lacquer for it, but the outcome, of course, it really has those sweet spots really honed in for this. So if this is a record you really like and you want to hear it the best way it can be presented on vinyl, for me, at least right now, before I look at any other version like the Abbey Road, this AP75 2LP on 45 RPM represents the best of the best for this record, and has really turned a record that, I didn't play much because I mean, in the music I didn't listen to a lot, but it really makes me appreciate the artistry and the music that is there in a whole new way. And mainly I heard it on radio, back in the day, of course. So it's always hard to appreciate, what you really got there, of course, because they do all sorts of crap to make it sound the way it sounds. I was in radio. I know that game. So, but this is really a pleasing experience, and one that if you're into this album, you will really enjoy the outcome of this. I mean, it's easy enough to say, hey, I don't think I need these other copies. I got this one, and it's gonna do the job for me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's funny. I was thinking about it. It came out the year I graduated from high school. And so I knew this album very well because it was, it was super, super popular at the time. And so I knew it well, but at the same time, I hadn't listened to it in quite some time. And I'll tell you, the Atlantic 75 just made me, I had the same experience. It's like, I just want to keep listening to this. And everything that I enjoyed about it back then, all those years ago, was there, but enhanced and even better. And I think that's the best endorsement you can make, is when it's over, it's like, I want to play it again. And then I want to play it again. That to me is, that's kind of the mic drop. You're done.
Yeah, and I've found that, songs that I have some recollection of because of association of whether it's high school or whatever it is, there's different levels of emotion that can hit you. And to me, the better it sounds, it seems like the more impact it has to me, the more it draws me into that memory and the ability to go back to that. It just kind of sweetens the pot in terms of tickling your memory, I think. And, I could obviously see in this kind of album exactly how that would happen. I mean, it happened to me with some of the Eagles Mofi one-step releases where, I really, Hotel California, the self-titled ones that I knew really, really well, to where it really was like, man, that's just, I've never heard it that way before. I've never experienced that before. And it really made those memories kind of a little more bright and a little more alive in us. So that's the great thing about music. It brings us back to that. So if there is someone with a 45 RPM Abbey Road, let me know and we can do a shootout on it. I'm more than happy to do that. I'd like to actually see how that turns out. So as always, thanks for watching, Brad. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Great to do a live shootout together. It's a lot of fun. And again, if you haven't subscribed, please press on the bell below, and thumbs up or like is always appreciated, as well as your comments. So until we do our next vinyl shootout, which will be very shortly, you take care and have a good week. See you, everybody. Bye-bye.